Welcome to the Soul Curious podcast. I'm your host, Sammy Anderson, and in this podcast, I talk about all things spirituality and self-development and how we can use these tools as guidance to connect to our highest self. My goal is to connect with others who share their talents with the world and who are unapologetically themselves. Tune in every Tuesday and Thursday to hear these conversations and quench your curiosity. Welcome back to the show, everyone. I am your host, Sammy Anderson. Today's episode is with Philomena, aka OMENA. And so she is a natural born clairvoyant, a soul historian, spiritual counselor, coach, and a medium. And she talks and shares with us so much about our soul types. And I absolutely loved this conversation. I've been diving, I've just read this book called The Instruction, and it's all about soul types, and it's so interesting. But we talk about the different soul types. So there's 7, the king, priest, sage, artisan, warrior, scholar, and server. And she let me know right at the beginning of the episode that I was a sage type. So I've just been looking up and, trying to get all the information on what the sage soul is. So it's really cool because I resonate so much with it. But we talk about, how you can know what your soul type is. We touch on just every single aspect, positive traits, negative traits on soul types, and how she loves helping, waking people up to being who they are at the soul level. And so this was a really fun conversation, and she is so genuine, so much knowledge. So I cannot wait for you guys to listen in. If you have not joined already, I invite you to join the Facebook group. It's the Soul Curious Podcast group on Facebook. Definitely join us. I have a little post up about any topics that you guys are interested in learning about, and I will do solo episodes on them. So anyways, I hope you guys enjoy this episode, and I welcome you to Philomena.
Tell me, is your birth name Sammy, or is it short for something else?
It's short for Samantha.
Oh, okay, because that's a totally different vibration with Samantha compared to Sammy. It's much different vibration altogether. Can I go by vibrations of the first name? Because that's all I need.
Yeah. What's the difference in them?
Well, the difference in Samantha is a much older soul, and with Sammy, it's a much younger soul.
Okay.
So you have both energies.
Yeah.
You can be either one. You can be very mature, and then you can be very childlike, which is a good thing to have.
Yeah.
Because that keeps everything fresh.
Yeah.
So you sort of go between both.
Yeah. Oh, I feel that so much. I've been reading and doing a lot of I've been reading this book called The Instruction, but I don't know if you've heard of it. But it goes really deep in the soul types and all of that. And I'm trying to work on getting to know myself on that level. And so it's been really interesting, but I feel that.
Well, before you start, do you want me to tell you what type of a soul you are?
Sure. That would be awesome.
Okay, well, you're a sage soul. And I can tell you what a sage soul does. The positive traits, they're naturally entertaining and articulate. They excel in communication with both wit and wisdom. That's the positive. The negative is that they can lapse into overperforming, overacting, or being melodramatic rather than being real.
Yeah.
Sometimes I think you do that if you get nervous. Hogging the spotlight, loving the sound of their own voice, craving attention for its own sake rather than actually communicating something of value. You don't do that too much, though. You've grown out of all of that. You've grown out a lot of the negative traits. So but you are naturally entertaining and articulate. And also you chase after information. I
Yep.
just wanted to do that. I didn't know if you wanted that to be on the public.
Well, if you don't mind, I'd love to have it on there. That'd be cool. Um, that like, oh my gosh, I am always like all of that resonates so well.
Well, that's good though,
So,
because the more you know yourself, the better off you are.
uh-huh.
I always decide it's really good to know the good, the bad, the ugly, the watch, the whole lot, because it's not a judgment, it's just who you're made up of
Mm-hmm.
from all your lives experience, I should say.
Yeah.
And that brings you to whatever mission you're on this life. And that seems to be more information that you want to provide to people.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
You just,
Oh,
yeah,
yeah.
you just have to decide what information.
Yeah. It's when I just started this. I had an old podcast. It was called like Best Self Babes. It was more about self-development. But I just like felt like I needed to go in this direction.
Yeah.
And so I've just been following that, and it's been really cool. And it's opened me up in a lot of different ways. And I feel like the last couple of months, like I've grown a lot and been able to like acknowledge what I need to shed more of it. I mean, it's an up and down journey, but
That's good though. But
so
it's good to have that kind of curiosity.
yeah.
Definitely. Yeah.
Yeah.
So have we started or are we going to
Yep.
start?
Yep, we're recording. So I'll look
Oh,
to
we
ask
are.
you.
Okay. So
Yep.
what else do you want to know?
Yeah. So Philomena, would
Yeah.
you introduce yourself and just talk about the work that you do?
Okay. My name is Philomena McGee, aka OMENA. I'm a natural born clairvoyant, a medium, and a soul historian. I've been doing this work all my life with people, and it's my life's mission. I thoroughly enjoy it. My contact information, my website is omena777.com. My email is omenacenter777@gmail.com. Phone number is 860-871-6076. If you call, leave a message for Richard and he will get back to you within 24 hours. If I am talking to you and you ask any questions, I just need the first name of the person you're talking about and your relationship to them. It doesn't matter what side of the world they're on. If they've passed over, tell me they've passed over. Or if it's a relationship, because everything is relationships. Everything is about relationships. I don't care where you go, what you do, it's all about relationships. So I was a social worker for 45 years. I'm retired. So I have a great deal of knowledge about any problem you want to ask. And I encourage, ask any problem you want. If the answer comes, the answer comes. If it doesn't, then you're not meant to have it yet. They'll tell me if they're not going to give me the answer. And the other thing that I do, I'm never going to blurt out anything to embarrass anybody. If information comes in that I think that requires respect and I use discernment, I will ask your permission first if you want to know the information, especially if we're doing a public radio show or if I'm doing a group. I'll always ask permission to give you the information first. That's how I work.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
So one question I have is, so what is a soul historian?
Well, that's somebody that can tell anybody that they want to know about their soul. If they want to know their soul type, the soul growth, what healing ray they came in on, how many lifetimes they've had. People make absolute decisions in past lives that they carry through to this life that gets in the way of having a healthy relationship or stops them from being who they are, their authentic self. If they've totally cut off everything from the soul, I explain all of that to them.
Mm-hmm.
So it's really years and years and years of discovering what a soul is. And I remember one time sitting in my living room and I'm talking to my guides and I'm going, okay, what am I supposed to do next? Because I had done all the readings and all the mediumship and all of that. And I was getting bored with some of that. And I thought, I really need to know what am I doing here? And they told me very clearly, it's all about the soul. You have to educate people about their soul, because a lot of people go around asleep because you have gifts of the soul that they don't acknowledge. And the soul has an ego and the personality has an ego. So it all kinds of dances with each other. So that's what led me to sitting with somebody sitting in front of me. And I thoroughly believe the reason why it goes so deep is because I thoroughly trust. I don't have to do anything. I just have to sit there and let the information come. If a person comes for a reading, they have to make a list of questions that they want to know, that they want answers to. I'm not going to sit in front of you and guess, because I hold the person in front of me responsible for the information they want. So I'm not going to prompt them. I might ask simple questions, but I'm not going to prompt them, or I don't do fortune telling. Like sometimes people say, when am I going to meet a dark, rich, tall, handsome man? Go down to the bank and talk to the bank manager. That's how you're going to meet him.
Yeah.
Rather than, and I might say, well, you're not ready yet. Because if you were ready for that kind of a relationship, you would have already met them. And sometimes that doesn't go down too well when you tell somebody, because now they have work to do. And that's what it turns out to be. It's more about the truth and what resonates to you, because you're going to know, anybody else is going to know what hits your truth. Because I don't have to prove it to you. You're going to know it. And sometimes I have everybody record their sessions, because when they record the session, they can listen to it. Half the time they might have selective hearing. They're not going to hear it. They might deny it, and that's okay. They can do what they want, as long as you take the recording away with you and you keep listening to it. And then they get, after maybe the fifth time, they'll get, oh, that's what she meant by that. So it's training the brain to erase some of the false memories, some of the false belief systems, and finally get through to the truth. So I kind of work like that.
Yeah, that's beautiful. With soul, okay, so soul types, how many, are there like an infinite number of soul types, or just like a certain, no?
There's only 7 soul types,
Okay.
to my knowledge, the information I got.
Yeah.
We have a king soul, a priest soul, a sage soul, artisan soul, the scholar soul, warrior soul, server soul. I can go through them and tell you, if you want me to, that positive and negative. Okay.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Well, the king's soul, for an example, John F. Kennedy, you'd probably be way too young to remember who he was, but Jesus Christ, they were king souls.
Yeah.
And they're benevolent, they're very charismatic, they're commanding, they're composed, they're natural leaders, they're perfectionists, they're strategic, they're troubleshooters, they're very stable. And that's the positive traits. Now you can get the king soul they're very arrogant, they're controlling, demanding, extravagant, heartless sometimes, inflexible, intolerant, overbearing. They're tyrant. That would be the king soul. The priest soul, they're very compassionate. They're the good shepherd that wants to bring everybody into their flock. They're sort of like the guiding light to everyone. They're very loving. They're also very mature in that sense. And they're very loving. And that's what when you're a priest soul or a king soul, you aim for all those positive traits, because that's part of the soul. Now, if you go to the negative traits, they can be demanding. They're intensely self-righteous, preachy. They're determined to convert everybody into their single vision, so to speak. Okay. And they have to grow into the positive traits. And I already told you about the sage soul, but I'll do it again. They're naturally entertaining, and they're articulate, and they excel in communication with both wit and wisdom. So you have all that to grow into yet. You're already going there, but you're still going to grow more. And they can also lapse into overperforming. Sometimes they will lapse into performing if they feel they're not being good enough, or what they're doing is not good enough. They're going to overcompensate. And they may get melodramatic if they don't quite know how to deal with the stress. And they hug the spotlight, love the sound of their own voice, which I would love to do, learn how to love the sound of my own voice. They crave it. They crave attention for its own sake rather than actually communicate. But after a while, they're going to get tired of that, and then they're going to learn how to communicate a lot more effectively. And then we have the scholar soul. We have a lot of scholar souls. Mm-hmm. They're able to develop clear, objective understanding for the good of all. So Einstein was a scholar soul. No, he was an artisan soul. He wasn't a scholar soul. They can be useful experts. It's almost like they study everything, so they give you all the right information about a specific subject if you want it. So they're an authority on particular subjects. And if they're on the negative traits, they just get lost in meaningless theoretical issues that are impractical and they're no interest to anybody but themselves. And then the guy to go around proving that they're right about that. Mm-hmm. And we have the warrior soul. They're forceful, effective without being overbearing. They're respectful, persuasive, courageous, and protective. And they're hell on wheels when they're the negative one. Because warrior souls will descend into intimidation and brute oppression. The ends justifies the means, and any approach that gets the results that they want, as useful that they perceive it to be, no matter how unpleasant it is to others. So there's a huge disparity between the positive and the negative of all the soul types. Mm-hmm. But that's also part of the growth. Mm-hmm. The artisan souls, and we have a lot of artisan souls, can be very inventive, very entertaining. And an artisan soul has applied imagination. So when it comes from the heart, then it leads to the creation. And that's truly coming from the soul and their gift of genuine creative fulfillment. So you get an awful lot we have a lot of our singers, our dancers, our actresses that are truly artisan souls because they're gifted in the art that they do. Now, if they're on the, I don't have anything negative on them. Well, yes, I do. On the negative artisan souls, you'd almost think that they were split personalities, even if there's no such thing. It would almost be like dealing with someone that's bipolar without being bipolar. Mm-hmm. The negative side of them, they show you one side of their face, and they're good actors in terms of almost delusional about things. Mm-hmm. So the negative side, the reality would be different than everybody else's. Mm-hmm. Now, the server soul is the most altruistic and a combination of the roles of all the souls that tend to put their needs of others first, even to their own detriment. In the positive role, a server soul might be better described as a saint. Mother Teresa is the perfect example of a server soul. Now, the negative side of a server soul, and I meet a lot of them, they're usually females because they're usually mothers and they serve till the skin is off of their fingers. Mm-hmm. They're the caretakers. And I mean caretakers, assuming that nobody can take care of themselves. They're the ones that can take care of you. But the payoff to that is as they grow older, they become bitter and angry because they feel nobody appreciates them. So I have them turn that into being the caregiver rather than care server. The caregiver will only do for them what they cannot do for themselves to break that chain. If they're server souls and get lost up in looking for their identity through caring for everybody else and neglecting themselves, mm-hmm. that payoff is never good.
Yeah.
So it's like they feel like they're in bondage and they have no choice and they end up being bitter rather than better. Mm-hmm. So I try to coach them into being better rather than bitter.
Yeah.
And that's the seventh soul types.
Yeah.
And that's the seven soul types that wander around the world, and I'm trying to wake them up.
Yeah. Yeah. So So you were kind of saying you've met a lot of like server soul types and artisan. So are there a lot more certain soul types than others?
Well, in the art population, it's difficult. Of course, we learn all about the artisans, we learn all about the scholars, we
Hmm.
learn about the pre-souls when they all have roles where they've become famous
Hmm.
for their leading countries, that kind of thing. But the truth is that every day we run into people, and if we pay attention to their personalities, you're going to get a genuine feeling of who they are, and you're going to get a genuine feeling what their investment is.
Hmm.
If their investment is promoting themselves, or if it's really truly that they recognize you with another soul and they're genuine.
Hmm.
Because when you're expressing your own soul, you're definitely, um, it's very genuine, it's very warm. It's just very, very genuine. Like ego of the soul is empowerment, gratitude, and you have empowerment, gratitude, and observance. Ego of the personality is envy, gratification, and obsession.
Hmm.
So if anybody finds themselves in the ego of the personality with those traits, you have to switch the brain to, let's say, well, let me observe this interaction and see what I get from it.
Hmm.
Or let me count my gratitude, what I'm grateful for, what I have, even if they're small little things, because without gratitude, there's no joy.
Hmm.
And when you have a lot of gratitude, it increases your abundance.
Hmm.
And encouragement, you have to learn. If you've never been encouraged, if a person has never been encouraged, then they have to learn how to work on themselves, encourage themselves. And that's the difference between the soul and the personality. Because the personality ego is very, very, very demanding.
Hmm.
But if we want to integrate both together, we need to listen to our souls because it talks to it all the time and we don't know it.
Hmm.
You know when you get deja vu?
Yes, I get deja vu all the
Well,
time.
that's your soul talking to you.
Oh man, yeah.
And one of the best things you can do is when you get deja vu, just ask and say, okay, make it clear. What
Yeah.
am I feeling? Make it clear. And it'll be made clear to you because when you ask the universe for something that's for your higher good, it can't say no.
Hmm.
It just can't say no. So, what else do you want to know about the soul?
Yeah. How can someone figure out what their soul type is?
I would think that it makes me kind of chuckle because I think
Yeah.
you'd find out about your soul type if you're walking around and you're miserable. You're not doing your soul type.
Yeah.
You're doing the adaptive self to somebody else's idea of who you are. You're not being your natural self. Your natural self will show you your soul type
Hmm.
because you'll gravitate towards that expression and you'll find a way of expressing, let's say, for instance, if you are an artisan soul, and we all know the artisan souls, through the singers, the dancers, the actors, the actresses, the producers, all of that. But the everyday soul walking around, the artisan soul may be a great chef in their own kitchen.
Hmm.
They may be they may be a great dressmaker or tailor or whatever. That's all an expression of their gifts of the soul, where they're being actively doing their who they are on a soul level. They may be drawing, they may be writing. It doesn't have to be on the world stage for it to be great.
Hmm.
It just means it has to be great that you're getting to express who you are and you're happy with that.
Hmm.
You may be a great person at creating games. It's like having that fun. It's like just it's just kind of joy having the fun. It's like the kid running through the field, and they're just totally loving doing that.
Yeah.
So that's how they learn what type of soul they are
Yeah.
in terms of what's their expression. There's some children, and we all know them, are not interested in the outside at all. They just want to be in the room reading books.
Hmm.
That's a scholar soul. And we want them well rounded, so sometimes we force them to be different than who they are.
Hmm.
And children want to please parents or whoever the caretakers are. But to encourage, find out what the child gravitates. Some children are inventors when they're little because they're very mechanical. They have to take everything apart. They have to put everything together. So they may be builders.
Mm-hmm.
It's just amazing how if we allow children to be their natural selves, everything emerges much quicker.
Yeah, absolutely.
You know,
Yeah.
their natural born talents. When I was very, very young, I was able to see things clearly. Drove everybody crazy, but I didn't know what it was at the time, but nonetheless, it was being able, I always knew when older people were making up stories or telling me lies or, and then I might tell them something I see about them and that would shut everybody up. So I grew up knowing, you know too much, you ask too many questions, because I did.
Mm-hmm.
And then I learned that, oh, it's okay to be that. I was probably a teenager when I realized, oh no, that's who I am. That's the way I am.
Mm-hmm.
I just learned to use a lot more discernment now.
Yeah. So one thing that kind of has been, as you talk about like children, just like letting children allow themselves to be themselves, or just like figuring out kind of, or just following what you like to do.
Yeah.
And in order to really connect and find your soul type, how can we navigate just the modern world today where we have so much outward influences and like social media, or maybe being confused on what we might like to do because it's like popularized, I guess.
It's called boundaries.
Yeah.
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 Children who have good, healthy boundaries feel safe. When there's no boundaries, children push and push and push to see if somebody would give them a boundary.
Mm-hmm.
My youngest son has 3 children, and they were 16 years old before they could have a cell phone.
Mm-hmm.
And it began with just texting before they got to where they could make calls. That's a boundary,
Mm-hmm.
because they spent all their time doing sports and doing other things rather than spending growing up on a phone.
Mm-hmm.
So it's kind of funny. When my kids were young, it was all the games that they had, different games, but they're dinosaurs. But they were only allowed a certain amount of time that they could play on the video games.
Mm-hmm.
They had to find something else to do with their time. And it's those boundaries that helps children not only manage their time, but makes them feel safe. It also allows them time to go do whatever comes naturally to them, because all the other stuff becomes addictive.
Mm-hmm.
And they don't learn their communication skills. I mean, if you were asked a kid to add up a bunch of numbers, they'd have to go to their phone to figure it out.
Yeah.
I always see in the future, people are going to be the size of your fist with the thumb going up and down,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
blinking on something, because it'll shrink everything up.
Yeah.
So I think with children, it's about giving them boundaries, and there's nothing wrong with giving them a limited time for watching their favorite TV show, or pick out their favorite TV show, or a certain amount of time playing their games, a certain amount of time on phones if they have them. It's all about managing that.
Mm-hmm.
And children are they're still going to bitch and moan and all the rest of it, whether you have good boundaries or no boundaries. But I
Yeah.
used to say to my kids, well, I'm the mother, you're the child. Your job is to be the kid or the child, and my job is to be the mother. So that's the rule. I make the rules, you keep them. And they would moan and groan. And I used to say, you know what? When you get to be 18, you can go to therapy about this.
Yeah. Yeah.
And they would go, oh, Ma, that's okay. You still can go to therapy when you're that. You don't like my parenting? Go to therapy and figure it out. But this is the rule now. So it's about being a parent and not trying to be the child's best friend.
Mm-hmm. Definitely.
Yeah, a lot of it, it's not that simple. I understand.
Yeah.
If you have any insecurities as a parent, children know it. They have great radar, and they're going to play on it. So if you're afraid of hurting their feelings, or, they don't love me anymore, you got to get over that. People have to get over that.
Mm-hmm.
But I coach people sometimes when they're adults, working with their adult children, because the adult children are still using the same tactics, and the parent is still reacting rather than responding.
Mm-hmm.
And I coach them how to respond rather than react. Get the emotions out of it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. So It's all about that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yes. Boundaries is so, so crucial
In everything.
yeah, exactly. I was just going to
In
say in every aspect.
in everything. And if they don't like them, you know what? You're going to lose some friends, but that's okay because that just means that you're growing. And eventually, the right people come into your life because when people ask me about soulmates, when is the right person going to come into my life? And I might say, well, what kind of characteristics are you looking for the right person? And they'll go through a list. And I'll say, you have to become all of that to attract the right person.
Mm-hmm.
You have to become what you want.
Yeah.
If you want the respect, you want the love, you want the space, you want whatever it is you want, you have to become that with yourself, and then you attract that person, you attract that energy towards you, because that energy is everything.
Mm-hmm. So,
Go
so
ahead.
with that, like, do certain souls uh, connect better, or like, or can different souls be with whatever? So,
Absolutely.
you know what I mean?
Yes,
Not
I know.
really.
Different soul types can attract each other.
Okay. Yeah.
Yes. The
Okay.
boundary part is the respect
Uh-huh.
and recognizing the individual and knowing that we're different and that's okay. It's not about controlling. And that takes mature souls to learn, but sometimes you're going to work towards that and you're going to learn how to be able to be individuals in a relationship and respected. And then you have the us part,
Mhm.
the healthy us part. Okay. Because if we're healthy ourselves, we don't need to control the other person
Mhm.
or be demanding or any of that. And then you have soulmates. One way you're going to recognize a soulmate doesn't mean that they have to be life partners. Soulmates is they're anyone that comes into your life to force you to grow or just to enjoy. So one of the things that you recognize as soulmate, you're totally going to love them and get on well together, or you're totally going to hate them.
Mhm.
And if we run into people that we totally dislike, you have a choice. You have to ask yourself why you dislike them, because they're showing something within ourselves that we need to look at.
Mhm.
Because somebody that you dislike can't come along and hurt you, because if they're nasty and they're hurting you, it's because the hurt's already in you.
Mhm.
So they're there to bring it up in you to see it so you can heal it. But most people won't allow their ego to do that.
Yeah.
They want to blame the other person. And if it's someone from another lifetime that you thoroughly had a great relationship, it might be just to get her to have fun, or a ship in the night. You just get an impression from that person. You really like them, but you don't see very much of them. But it also brings up all those good feelings.
Mhm. With so with like you kind of touching on in another lifetime, does can we shift soul types throughout our different lifetimes and past lives, or do we usually tend to stick to the same one?
I think that we tend to, what we are when we're created as a soul,
Excuse me.
we're giving a certain amount of gifts, and how we express that.
Mm-hmm.
I would think that if you're very evolved, you come in and out with whatever type of soul you want to be. Because let's say I'm a warrior soul.
Mm-hmm.
I've always been a warrior soul. Okay. I'm a fighter and a protector, and that's just the way I am, because I came in with no fear. So I don't have a problem with doing what I need to be doing.
Mm-hmm.
And if that's protecting, that's what I'm doing. And I have no problem with confrontation. Now, because I know I've always been a warrior soul. But let's say I wanted to come in and I wanted to be a king soul. Well, I'm going to have to start being a king soul at the very, very beginning. And that could take many lifetimes to be a mature king soul.
Mm-hmm.
So if we make that choice, you're going to spend a lot of time on the earth, because the earth is the only place of all the planets in the universe. The earth is the only place where you get to experience the mental, the emotion, the
Mm-hmm.
emotional, the spiritual, the physical, all at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
So that would be very, very busy. Okay, so what I'm being told right now is no. When we're at our creation, we pick what type of soul we want to be, and we stay that type of soul.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So like, okay, that makes a lot of sense.
yeah,
And just like over time evolving and stepping towards like when you said like my name's Samantha is a lot like a more older soul and just
yes,
growing into those positive traits.
yes.
Um so again then with like my nickname being Sammy, it being a younger soul type with people. So if people have like names that they go by, like nicknames that can kind of different like shift their vibration, shift their energy
Oh,
of what type they are.
absolutely.
Yeah.
I will tell you a little story about this young man that, oh, he's probably 29 or 30, but looked like a teenager, got in and out of trouble with the law, just having a difficult time with life.
Mm-hmm.
His name is Joseph, so they call him Joey. His behavior is totally different when you call him Joey than when he was called Joseph. So it's becoming aware that and usually when we have small children, we have a tendency to shorten their names because it's cute.
Mm-hmm.
But if that vibration stays that way, it doesn't give them a chance to grow into their real selves. And oftentimes, if you're aware of it and you want to be called a certain name and you want to be called, that's different, because then you're aware that you have this childlike energy and you're just going to have fun with it. And then when you want to be mature, like my full name is Philomena.
Mm-hmm.
I think I used to be called Mina when I was little. And my sisters call me Phil, and that's okay. They're allowed to do that, but nobody else is allowed to do it.
Yeah.
If that makes sense, okay?
Mm-hmm.
And Omena is my higher self, which is a totally different energy altogether. But being aware of it, you're able to shift into those energies. Like when you're Sammy, your personality is a lot more bubbly.
Yeah.
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 And when you're Samantha, you're much more formal.
Oh yeah.
But you're probably very aware of that.
Uh-huh. I can relate to you saying like your sisters are the only ones that can call you Phil. My family's the only one that can call me Samantha. It
Exactly.
feels weird when anyone else calls me that, but yeah.
Yeah, exactly. I have 6 sisters and 2 brothers, and they
Wow.
all call me Phil, and that's okay.
Mm-hmm.
But that's about it. Nobody else calls me Phil
Yeah.
because I like the name Philomena.
Mm-hmm.
I like the name Omena. I like the name Mina.
Mm-hmm.
Phil to my family is okay.
Yeah.
So there's many different parts of ourselves that we can express, and there's many different parts of our natural selves that we can express.
Mm-hmm.
And I live out loud.
Yeah. With our soul types, can we have like the main soul type and then a part of a different type? Or would that just be more of like, do you know what I mean?
I think you're talking about when let's say you are I don't know, pick a soul type. What soul type would you like me to tell you?
Um, the artisan.
Okay, so you can have the artisan soul that depending on how they express themselves, they most certainly can have other traits of different soul types just by their actions, by their curiosity, by their reading, by their learning. They
Mm-hmm.
might study different things, but the core soul would still be there.
Mm-hmm.
They may look, it's funny when they're growing and maturing, they may look at all different types of things to find out, to discover the artisan in them and how they're going to express that.
Mm-hmm.
So that could be trying a lot of different things first, and then finally they get to where, oh my God, this fits like a glove.
Mm-hmm.
This is who I am. So they will do that. We all do that. If we're awake, we do it. If we're not awake, we don't do it. And it depends on the age of our soul.
Mm-hmm.
The soul has, do you want me to go through them for you?
Yes, definitely.
Well, because it helps to understand the different stages of the soul. You have the infant soul. Now, an infant soul will definitely, they decide what country they're going to be born into because infant souls do not have a lot of consciousness, so they often come into warm climates where they don't have to worry about shelter or food, because warm climates will sometimes naturally grow the fruit on the trees or on the vine, and so they don't have to worry about all of that. And their main thing is to survive. So that's what infant souls done. They're impulsive, they're non-conventional, they act on impulse or habit. They have with little or no regards or thoughts to the consequences. Of course, in the mental health field, which I worked in for years, we would give them a label. I'm not going to say what the label is, but that would be an infant soul, you know. They're out for themselves and nobody else, because that's how they survive.
Mm-hmm.
And then they move from the infant souls to the toddler souls. You can spend many lifetimes as one soul in the growth. You could spend many lifetimes as an infant soul until you get to the toddler soul. Now, the toddler soul, then I think we all know who they are. They think a great deal about their actions. We might think they're not spontaneous at all, mm-hmm. because they're all about safety, security, structure, and order, and they can be very rigid. Mm-hmm. Anybody that has parents that are very rigid, they could very well be toddler souls. Mm-hmm. And their belief systems and their actions are largely all about, they're rule bound. They have strict boundaries. They're ultra-conservative, traditionalist, orthodox, upright, moralistic, you know, the judge, religiously devout, and mindful of law and order. They might almost turn into being OCD about it, where they're, you know, they have to keep you. This is how they stay safe. When you have young souls, and we have a lot of young souls in the music industry, where they're teenagers, and I love teenagers. Mm-hmm. I think their energy is wonderful. And they're very, you know, they can be very extravagant. They're extroverts. Mm-hmm. They're just energetic. They're bashed. They're competitive, political, ambitious, individualistic. They are just more ego-driven and quite comfortable in it. Mm-hmm. And there's nothing wrong with that. I think it's great energy. And then you have the mature soul. They have a tendency to be thoughtful, reflectful, sincere with themselves and everybody else around them. They can be sensitive, empathetic towards other people. They question everything, including their own motives. You get a lot of them where they're just totally mental about everything and drive you crazy. And are prone to do a lot of soul searching.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then we have the wise old soul. And they really do gravitate towards wisdom. They're full of wisdom sometimes, that it's unmistakable. They're also lighter. They have a sense of joyous freedom. They enjoy being very much in the world, but not of it. Mm-hmm. They are reflective, calm. They're measured, untroubled, and stable, and don't get involved or interfere too much with somebody's process. They sort of sit back and observe, and it kind of goes like, well, you can tell them all of this, they're not going to hear you anyway. Mm-hmm. Because they need to grow into their own wisdom, mm-hmm. you know. And that's about it for the stages of soul growth.
Yeah. Do we go through like that stage? Can we go through that stage in one lifetime, or does that just take many lifetimes to go through?
Usually it takes many lifetimes.
Okay.
Yeah, it takes many, many lifetimes to go through all of this. And depending on, before we come into each lifetime, we're going to, young souls and mature souls, old souls are a little different, but the other souls, they're going to pick the family they want to come into, the society they want to come into, the ethnic group they want to come into, because I want to say there's only one race, and that's the human race. The rest is all ethnic, regardless of color, creed, or sexual orientation. You pick all of those for whatever way it's going to help you with your growth. Mm-hmm. And your need to fulfill. Now, when you come in and you have a personality and ego and free will, nobody interferes with your free will, then it depends on how your lifetime goes. Mm-hmm. You may have to come back and correct things, because true justice to me is karma.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's my thing about that. True justice is karmic, and karma you can get rid of in this in a split second, or you can spend many lifetimes getting rid of it.
Mm-hmm.
So it has to do with insight. It has to do with your own insight.
Yeah.
And some people do not have a young soul, or infant souls have no insight. Toddler souls are very rigid. Young souls don't have a lot of insight. The mature soul begins to get insight.
Mm-hmm.
That's why they question themselves. And the old soul knows all about insight. That's why they keep quiet.
Mm-hmm. If we are like an older soul and we've kind of reached, like, is there, I would imagine the goal is to kind of like get to the path of being an old soul or growing within ourselves.
Yeah.
What do you feel is after that? Do we come back and do we just keep coming back, or do you feel like we move on to a different level or a different dimension, a different level of consciousness?
That's entirely up to the soul that's doing the journey.
Mm-hmm.
The I can only speak for my own soul. This is my last time around. I'm
Yeah.
not doing this anymore
Yeah.
unless I'm an ascended master, and I will be, where I can pop in and out whenever I want.
Yeah.
And I know that it's a knowing. You begin to grow into who you are on a spiritual level, and you just know. It's a knowing.
Mm-hmm.
So, and then let's say I can tell you my version what happens when you leave the world, if you want me to.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. So when you leave this lifetime, and after you recuperate from the journey, depending on how you left the world, if it was by your own hand, or if it was by long-term illness or heart attack, whatever way you leave the world, once you adjust to where you are on this new level of consciousness, you're going to go from this very dense body to a light body.
Mm-hmm.
And you're going to recognize all your family members, you might say, in the light body, until you move on to, once you've adjusted, now you're going to move on to the reality. And the reality is you're going to go to the, the hall of, the memorial hall. And you're going to be showing your whole life in front of you. And as you view that, you're going to feel every pain you ever inflicted on anybody, anything negative you ever said to anybody. You're going to feel all of that. But you're also going to feel all the joy and love you brought to somebody, because that balances all the energy. That's the reality. There's no punishment. There's no hell. That's religion. The spiritual part is you choose to go on this journey, so therefore you have to reap what you sow. You got to feel what you sow, and it balances out all the energy. So let's say you have your energy all balanced out. Now you can make a decision if you want to come back, or you want to go to another planet, or you want to just stay in the school and ascend. You have to go through seven colleges. I can't remember them off the top of my head, but they're very, very enlightening.
Mm-hmm.
Let's say someone that takes their own life. I had a lady one time come talk to me about her son. She didn't tell me anything about him, just gave me his first name, and I said, oh, he's in the school of life. He has to learn all about life. I said, did he commit suicide? She said, yes. And that's the first time I realized that people who take their own lives, they have to learn all about life, the gift of life. They have to learn all about self-love before they can come back to the planet. And he said to her, the message for her was, he wants you to put all his writings in a book. So she gets up, goes through her bag, shows me the book. She already had done it.
Wow.
And they were all about with all in poetry style, his whole struggle through life, about poetry style, through poetry. So, and that was the first time I learned what happens to people who take their own lives and move on. It's like, let's say in this lifetime, if you're super depressed and you're super angry, and when you go on the other side, these are all feelings and it's energy. You bring it with you. So you have to work on that on the other side, but in a much more loving environment. Nobody's going to push you. Nobody's going to judge you. They're just going to show you. So you balance all that energy out. But if you're living from the soul, it's much easier because you're living your own natural self. there's no need to hate somebody else unless you're carrying that energy with you.
Mm-hmm.
So it's sort of, that's my simple version of it, I guess you could say.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
and I thoroughly feel that and know that and believe that. And if we follow some of that, how can you go wrong? You can't.
Mm-hmm.
If someone wants to prove me wrong, that's okay too.
Yeah.
But I want to know how they're going to do that.
Yeah. No, I love that you shared that. A lot of like just what I've been like learning and talking to people to just that process. And yeah, it's just it's beautiful, and it's a really good way to like in my like perspective to just bring more of that like faith into it and know that, you know, we're all here for a reason, for a purpose.
Exactly.
And like
And keep it
there's
simple.
yeah. Yeah.
To me, it's practical spirituality.
Yeah.
It's applied. It's
Yeah.
simple every day, how you get up, and everything begins with a thought, so you can change your thinking.
Mm-hmm.
Because everything begins with a thought.
Mm-hmm.
You can make it negative or you can make it positive. It's really about what's going on in the world today is a paradigm shift, because the old belief systems are no longer working.
Mm-hmm.
So people, if they want to stay on the earth, have to change their belief systems into a more positive energy, because if you send stuff out in the universe, positive or negative, it connects to that energy.
Mm-hmm.
It's a collective consciousness.
Yeah.
And well, that's where I get most of my information, is from the collective consciousness through the ascended masters that work with me, because it's all there.
Mm-hmm.
Every single bit of it is there. Now, some souls, if you have a listening audience, it's very important for them to understand why they don't fit into their families.
Mm-hmm.
Because a lot of people that talk about that, I'm not, I really don't like my mother, or I don't like my father. I don't know how I ended up with them. They're souls that randomly picked a family to come into because they're in such a hurry to come back.
Mm-hmm.
And my thing is, if you're not bonded to them, you can't make yourself feel something towards them if you're not bonded to them.
Right.
Okay? If you love or hate your parents, you know you're bonded. If you have no feeling, you're not bonded.
Mm-hmm.
And recognize it and own it and move on.
Mm-hmm.
Because we're taught as children that we should love our parents. Well, not everybody has loving parents.
Mm-hmm.
So it's hard to know. We pick our parents to learn lessons that we have to learn. You have to, if it's to stand in your own power, if it's to learn compassion, tolerance, whatever it is that you have to learn, they force you to grow, and you may not like them for doing it. Hopefully someday people can appreciate that,
Mm-hmm.
at least on a soul level. But we set it up, believe it or not. It's our own free will.
Mm-hmm.
And nothing can happen to you without your permission.
Yeah.
That takes a little bit to wrap. That took me a little bit to wrap around my brain.
Yeah. But it's so true. I
It is.
mean, yeah, we create everything, or, you know, what we do and how we think and everything. I definitely agree.
Oh, I worked for 10 years with people living with HIV and AIDS and addiction.
Uh-huh.
And I used to do groups. And I had a young man in there who had just come out of prison. He was in there for a short time, but he had gotten shot in his leg. So I brought up the whole thing. Nothing had happened without your permission. And he goes, "What do you mean? You mean I wanted to be shot in the leg? Where were you when you were shot in the leg?" I was standing in a corner. Whose corner was it? When you're in your city, you have territory.
Mm-hmm.
If you're dealing with drugs, you have territory. You come on my territory, I'm going to shoot you.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, he went on their territory. What did they do? They shot him.
Yeah.
That's how you give permission.
Mm-hmm.
If you're going to test that boundary, whatever the code is, and you're going to ignore it, that's how you give permission for things to happen to you. It's like not listening to the red flags. You know how we all have red flags that pile up in our head or goes up when we meet people.
Mm-hmm.
People need to pay attention to the red flags. It's a warning.
Yeah.
Could be a little one, a big one, or a huge one. That's how we give permission for things to happen to us. So I go around every day. Nobody has my permission to hurt me.
Mm-hmm.
because I don't want to hurt anybody. And I used to go into very dangerous neighborhoods working with people when I did domestic violence, and nobody touched me.
Yeah.
Because I wasn't there. My intention wasn't there to hurt anybody or report anybody or do anything. I was there to investigate something.
Mm-hmm.
And as a result, actually, you walk down the street and you have in a dangerous neighborhood, and you have that energy around you. The person coming towards you will get off the sidewalk and go to the other side. That's how far your energy can go out and say, no, you need to go over there.
Mm-hmm.
So it's,
Yeah.
we're powerful beings.
Yeah.
We don't even know it.
What'd you say?
We're very powerful beings.
Yes.
And we don't even know it. And
Yes.
the feminine energy is far more powerful than the masculine energy.
Mm-hmm.
Masculine and feminine energy has nothing to do with gender, even though society has assigned those roles, but it has nothing to do with them. Because the feminine energy is full of the compassion and the passion, the creative energy. They're the creators. They can be the peacemakers. And they're not even aware that how powerful it is. Because the masculine energy comes along and they're afraid of the feminine energy. They're afraid of the power of it. So they do everything to suppress it.
Yeah. I've been, it's funny that you bring up like the feminine and masculine energy. That's something that's been like coming up a lot, just everywhere for me, like podcasts I listen to, and then just things I've been reading, just a lot about how we all have both.
Yes, but we come in as one.
Okay.
When we come in as soul, which is an extension of spirit, spirit has the masculine and the feminine energy. Okay, it's joined together. Only one part of the spirit decides to come into a soul and do that journey. It's either going to be the mental essence or the feminine essence.
Okay.
And the feminine essence feels everything through their emotional body, and the mental essence thinks everything through. So one can be feeling, especially in relationships, they often attract the opposite. So one can be feeling everything and the other can be thinking, how do you feel? Well, I think I feel. But I didn't ask you to think, I asked, how do you feel? So the emotional essence is sometimes a lot slower in processing everything. And the mental essence can be very quick and get very impatient with the emotional essence.
Yeah.
Wondering how come you can't do it faster. Well, if you recognize what type of an essence you are, it's going to make things a lot easier.
Yeah.
Because sometimes you have to give the feminine essence 24 hours to process what you just said.
Yeah. I think I'm the thinker.
No, you're the mental. You are definitely a mental essence. Yes. But let's say if you have somebody significant in your life, it gives you much more understanding if they're the feminine essence. And after a while, you begin to recognize them.
Yeah.
And I've met an awful lot of male genders who are feminine essence, trying to be the male essence because society demands that. And sometimes there's a great deal of relief when you explain, well, this is the type of essence you are. Then they can be who they are in a manly way if they want to be. It's just knowing that this is how they process information.
Yeah. My husband is definitely that way. He's brought a lot of that, and I've learned a lot from him about that. And so
it makes
oh, go ahead.
It makes it so much easier. I'm a very, very strong mental essence. But I'm also a strong feminine essence, because with the work I do, you have to have both, because you have to have the compassion, the understanding, the empathy, and the mental part is allowing people who they are and not try to change them. And it's having that balance. It's just having that balance to be able to do that. And when we become who we are, there's so much freedom to it, where we don't have to impress anybody.
Yeah. Absolutely. I just I wrote something the other day about how freeing it is to let go of like old beliefs or old habits or old things that aren't in alignment with who we are. And I mean, it's a process, but
it's a process.
It's definitely a process. But when you feel that freeing, just feeling more alive with it.
It's fun because you can have fun then. You see, we all come in with fears. There's I'm going to explain the fears to you. There's the fear of abandonment, fear of expression, fear of rejection, fear of exposure. But let's see, fear and what else? They're basic fears that we all come in with. Very few of us come in with no fears because we've done many lifetimes working on them. But it's good for people to know they're false belief systems. We bring them in with us, and then we learn to grow out of the fears and become who we are in our natural state. And then we don't have to worry about anything. But that's what makes people shy away from things, or they're shame-based, or whatever they are. All I can say about people that are shame-based, it's not yours. Give it back to whoever gave it to you.
Yeah.
Because usually somebody gives it to you,
Yeah.
So it's kind of like work with your soul, and it's amazing what the soul will bring to you. It'll bring everybody. It does it anyway. It brings everyone to you that you need in your life to force you to grow. Experience things and places.
Yeah. I love that so much.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the other thing people can do, they can demand that not be painful. You can make it light and funny. Learning does not have to be painful.
Yeah.
You can ask, okay, that's enough pain for that for now, why don't you just lighten it up and make it funny?
Yeah. Yeah, I know exactly.
Yeah, I know, because we do such stupid things to ourselves.
Yeah.
We do. We really do. We do stupid things to ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
And usually if somebody comes along and they want a life reading, well, then they usually get a soul reading, actually. They'll get 20 years of therapy in an hour, which is really cool. And they'll get all the reasons why they do what they do and why they keep doing it. And then they have to go about changing that. So it's very, very enlightening in that sense. And I love doing it.
Yeah, that's so wonderful.
Yeah, I love doing it.
Yeah. I have two more questions. One,